Welcome to Cloud Stories, where your host, Heather Smith, interviews some brilliant minds from the Xero ecosystem and beyond. This show shares stories from our community, developers, cloud integrators, end users, Xero solution providers, business consultants, accountants, bookkeepers, and people riding the cloud. Together we gain a 360-degree insight into this evolving phenomenon. We pick up tips, tools, and tactics from stories shared. We understand where the pieces of the puzzles fall into place, and in turn we can propel our business to the next level. Now here's your host, the very curious Miss Heather Smith.
Hello, welcome to the 4th episode of Cloud Stories. Today I'm your host, Heather Smith. In today's show, I'm talking to Jared Armstrong, the co-founder of the time tracking solution MinuteDock. The session went a little shorter than I anticipated, so after I speak with Jared, I share with you my tips for maximising your attendance at a conference. Know of any conferences coming up? Now, let me share with you details of some upcoming guests. I shall be speaking with Tom Wallace from the cloud-based commercial property management solution Release, who are based in Auckland. I've implemented Release into a number of businesses, so I've been watching the rapid development of Release, the business, and cheering them on from the sidelines. Looking forward to talking to Tom about the plans he has for his business. But back to today's show. In today's show, I talk with Jared Armstrong, the founder of MinuteDock, and he's given me a very long blurb about what his solution does, so let me read it out for you. MinuteDock is an online time-sheeting software designed to be super easy and efficient for freelancers and small to medium businesses. MinuteDock integrates directly into Xero to sync across your customers and make billing your time a breeze. Tracking time is natural and fast, and you can drill down into time spent by staff on clients, projects and tasks with MinuteDock's in-depth reporting. And you can keep track of budgets and targets with MinuteDock's goals. When you're ready to bill, send across an invoice to Xero in a matter of seconds. MinuteDock was founded in 2009 when the guys were sick of copying and pasting their time tracked into their accounting solution. They're a small company based in Wellington, New Zealand, and have seen steady growth over the last 5 years and have thousands of customers in countries all over the world, including myself, who is a raving fan of the MinuteDock solution. So, without further ado, let's get to hear from Jared. Hello, Jared. Thank you very much for coming on the show today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you and hearing more about your product and what you're doing in the business ecosystem at the moment. But what I'd first like to ask about is, Jared, who is your favourite superhero and why?
My favourite superhero? That's an interesting question. To be honest, I think recently it's probably been Batman. I think the recent movies that have come out have really made that whole story really relatable and realistic. Personally, I've never really been a huge fan of the sort of fantasy style of superhero. I've much more enjoyed the sort of real world, it's something that's actually potentially possible. Sort of things.
Fair enough. Are you looking forward to the new Ben Affleck movie with Batman?
To be honest, not really. I preferred the last three, and I thought they finished it off pretty well. But yeah, I'm not too sure how the new ones are going to go. Yeah,
there seems to be some, I guess, talk about it. But I think Ben Affleck always gets that, unfortunately. Poor guy, so good looking.
Yeah. He's a good actor as well. I like a lot of his other movies. I'm not too sure how he will go as a superhero, though.
I think he has the good-looking actor's curse.
Jared, can you share with us what your business does?
Yeah, MinuteDock is online time tracking software. So essentially it's built for any small business that has a time component as a key part of their business. So for a lot of consultants, freelancers, lawyers, bookkeepers, etc., obviously they need to track their time and bill it. And MinuteDock allows them to do that in a really easy way and really simply get invoices into their accounting system and send off to their customers.
Excellent. So when and why did you start MinuteDock?
So MinuteDock was started in mid-2009, and there were originally three of us who made it. And what we were at the time was we were software consultants, and we were, selling ourselves for an hourly rate and tracking our time, adding all the details of what we'd worked on. And being Kiwis, we also were onto this new great thing called Xero for our accounting.
Very good.
And it didn't. Xero doesn't have time tracking in their product, so we thought, okay, we'll just need a basic tool to track our time and get it into Xero. And it sort of grew from there, really. So we added a whole bunch of other features and sort of workflow around that time tracking problem to really kind of make tracking time and keeping track of your targets and budgets for clients and customers really easy and really seamless.
So you built it out of necessity for your own needs?
That's right. So we solved our own problems. We see the old classic case of scratching your own itch in terms of building a product. And that worked really well for us. For the longest while. These days, though, working full time on MinuteDock rather than consulting, so we're not necessarily billing our time, but we still track our time and keep track of where it's all going and sort of using MinuteDock, the old saying of dog fooding the product that you build. So we still get good use of it, but obviously we're kind of building it for a different audience than ourselves these days. So it's definitely a change in approach and a way of going about things than when we first started.
Okay. So what platform is MinuteDock built on?
From a technical side of things, the software is written in Ruby on Rails, which is a software framework. It came out of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Basecamp, the project management software.
Yes.
So it was probably, I think, 2005-ish, actually, 2006 maybe, that it sort of came out of Basecamp and sort of grew from there. Now, it's pretty big these days. It's been around for 10 years, I think, so it's very, very popular. Yes, we built the software on that, and in terms of, where we host the product, the servers are using Amazon's infrastructure.
Okay.
Amazon Web Services. So that's the same hosting setup that, Netflix, for example, uses to sort of host all their servers and, stream all their content.
Excellent. So what technical skills did you, Jared, have prior to starting MinuteDock?
So all three of us were web guys. We'd been building websites and web products before. Personally, I've been building websites since I was about 10 years old and, adding sort of app-like functionality to them and things like that. So, coming into building a software product for businesses, which MinuteDock is, that was sort of the next step from my sort of the stuff I previously worked on was more consumer focused rather than business focused. But yeah, we'd all been building websites and apps before, so it was kind of we just applying the skills that we already had into sort of a different context.
It seems that New Zealand's business development community software development community is very about building business solutions rather than perhaps social media solutions. So it's interesting that you kind of say that you kind of evolved to build a business solution.
To a certain extent, it's actually a really good point, actually, because if you think about it, one of the challenges of building consumer-focused products is that consumers, as a general rule, are less willing to depart with their hard-earned money.
Yes, absolutely.
The value proposition isn't quite as clear to the consumer mindset as it is for the business mindset, obviously, where if something's adding value to your business, then it's worth, most a little under the value that it's creating, right? So
yes.
It's really easy to sell to businesses. On the other hand, it's really difficult to sell to consumers. But that being said, there are consumer sort of social network products around, started by New Zealand guys. There's a product called Letterboxd, which is a tool where you can track which movies you're watching or you want to watch and write reviews. And it's almost like
and people pay for it.
People pay. It's like a freemium. It's a freemium service. Some people pay, some people don't. But I think I definitely don't think it's making a huge amount of money. But the idea is to get to a decent scale of users using it. I think they've got about 150,000 people on it at the moment. But they're really looking to expand internationally. And that's probably, I guess, one of the constraining things about New Zealand is that we are kind of on the other side of the world, really, in terms of consumer products. Really, the big markets are the US and Europe. So we're quite a way away. And sort of competing with players who are actually sort of, operating from that market is really, really difficult, especially when we have, much lower, funding opportunities here than overseas.
Yeah. I know that in a conversation I had with Rod Drury, and I don't want to take him out of context, but it was something along the lines of small business community is the first level and the largest group of people who are prepared to actually pay for something. So when you're online, the normal person isn't ready to pay for something, and that next level is the small business community, and they're the ones who are ready to pay for something. So it does make a lot of sense to, if you think along that lines, and that does seem to make a lot of sense, to build a business solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to whether or not you're in a business mindset, right? Like, there are still small businesses who operate in more of that consumer mindset where they're thinking, oh, actually this thing is costing me $5 a month. I'm going to go and spend 3 hours of my time
Absolutely.
to do it free instead. Whereas obviously that just doesn't make sense, right? That's a very consumer mindset approach to thinking about costs. And,
you're very right.
Essentially if you're valuing your time as free, then you're not really thinking about it as a business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I operate as a freelancer, and I have loads of the add-on solutions.
Yeah.
And I sit down and I use MinuteDock, and I sit down and work out I'll pull another one out as an example. Timely does online booking management solution, which when you booked the session with me, you used. And I figure if that just saves me 5 minutes of booking a meeting with someone, it's actually paid for itself, and everything else is a bonus. So
yeah, exactly. And the back and forth that saved in terms of figuring out a time is definitely worth 5 minutes for me and you, right? So. Yeah.
And it's time and it's time zone and it's like all of those things. But definitely that's a really interesting way. I perhaps hadn't articulated it as consumer business, but thinking like a business owner, definitely.
Exactly. And that's still a challenge that, a lot of freelancers struggle to kind of move away from their consumer way of thinking. Thinking like a business is actually not something that just happens naturally to a lot of people. I mean, sometimes it takes them kind of learning the hard way and realizing, actually, how much time am I spending, or if I just spent $20, it's going to save me a whole bunch of time and effort.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that they find when they work with a business coach or something like that, but hopefully listening to these sorts of shows and spending time looking at the ecosystem, they'll realise, but it is something that it is an education level that needs to flow out there. So, Jared, what's the most rewarding aspect of what you do?
So, I mean, personally, I cover pretty much all areas of the business. So I'm a software developer. I do the customer support stuff, sales stuff, things like this. So I kind of, get my hands dirty in pretty much every role in the business. So to me, that's actually really quite rewarding because it gives you a good understanding of essentially the whole business. You definitely feel that what you're doing really makes sense and is working when you can sort of, think about it in the context of every different part of the business in the way that it all works. But other than that, one of the other great things is talking to customers and when they, give feedback or when you hear things that aren't quite working for them and you can solve their problem for them, that's also really great as well. That's one of the reasons why I think pretty much everyone who's involved in the business should be taking some role in the customer support side of things because dealing with customers is really what running a business is about. And unless you're actually talking to customers and understanding where they're coming from, then it's really hard to apply that, to actually running the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you hear about these people developing software solutions and they want to perfect it before they actually talk to the customer. That sometimes doesn't work. And I know that other people then sell the solution, like they go out on these crowdsourcing sites and actually sell the solution before they've even developed it. And you do definitely need to know.
It's that old saying that no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? That applies to products as well. And I think the great thing is that it's so easy to sort of create a product, create a really simple version first and test it out with people as you're kind of building it and get their feedback. And that's kind of the way to build software these days is, it's not to go and get a whole bunch of money, sit in a cave and build it and then launch it. It's actually to work with customers to figure out actually what do they need.
Yeah, and you see the successful ones are both listening to the customers and then really adapting and evolving quickly when the customers come back and say, can you do this and can you do this, that, etc.
Yeah, and one of the things about that is, obviously it's you got to be careful about, you can't just go and say, oh yes, we'll go and add that to every single thing that a customer asks. But what you do see is different people wording things in different ways, and if you sort of drill down while you're talking to them about what is their situation, what are they trying to achieve out of what they're asking for, you can kind of combine across a whole bunch of different pieces of customer feedback and come up with an approach to implementing a feature or something that solves their problem in a way that is really simple and doesn't actually it causes less issues than, for example, just going and adding a feature and then finding out that that's actually not what they wanted, or that's only what that person wanted, not what everyone else wanted.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that as well. Yeah, you don't want to bow to everyone. Many people in the professional services have this mantra: sell packages, charge what you are worth, not the time you spend on the project. What do you say to them? Can your product be of benefit to those sorts of people who are flowing with that sort of thoughts?
Well, I mean, in terms of obviously the concept of selling packages rather than time, personally, I think obviously it depends on whether or not you can reliably create packages that you're going to trust that you're not going to be selling yourself short. But one of the things about time is that when you're selling, and again, this depends on who you sell to, right? I'd find that consumers rather than businesses tend to do this more often, but when you quote something in terms of time, the mindset immediately changes to, right, what is my time worth? And then they justify what you are charging based on what they think their own time is worth to do the same job. And oftentimes they significantly underestimate what that time is worth, and therefore they think that, if you're charging, $100 an hour, $80 an hour for a tradesperson, they think that's an off this planet ripoff, or actually that's probably pretty reasonable if you think about all the costs of doing business that tradesperson has, and the fact that obviously that the person hiring the tradesperson doesn't know how to do the role either. So I think like selling packages, if you can do that, is a great way of changing the framing of the cost from how much time am I buying to actually what value am I getting out of what I'm paying for. And I think in terms of actually being able to do that, what you really want to do is make sure you're tracking how much time you're actually spending, because really time is what the cost is to you, at least in the simplest terms.
Yes.
Your cost is how much time you spend to generate the revenue that you're getting from the customer. So keeping track of actually how much time you're spending across various jobs or various products that you're selling and for various customers is actually really important, even if you're not selling it in terms of you're not pricing them by the hour to what the customer's paying. You still want to be able to track that internally and get those reports and that visibility. So tracking that time is critical. And for MinuteDock, one of the ways you can do that is you can apply various tags or projects to every time entry that you're tracking, so you can go and report on whether or not this type of product is taking, how long it's taking for each customer. You can track goals in terms of, right, you've sold a package to a customer and you expect it to take you about 20 hours. You can set up a goal and keep track of how you're progressing along that, so that you can be kind of aware or alerted really early on whether or not you're probably spending too much time or too little time. But of course, when you're selling a package, you really want to really make the time that you're spending efficient, because the less time that you spend, means you're making more money. So,
yeah.
Having that sort of progress indicator to say, well, shit, I'm almost finished, but, I've only spent 2 hours and I've sold them, the equivalent of 30 hours work. And that's a great deal for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of the best place to be in.
I definitely think I hear people say they've moved to the value-add package services, and then they just lose all track of time about what's involved with it. And especially when you're managing a larger team, you really want all of the team members to be docking their time so you're aware of what's going on, because if person A takes 10 times as long as person B to do the same task. You need to understand why that's happening.
Definitely.
Excellent. So your business is based in Wellington at the very bottom of New Zealand's North Island. What's the internet connection like for you there?
Pretty good, actually. I have 200 megabit fiber, so it's probably better than yours.
Yeah, probably. Yes, I think everything's better than mine. Bless.
Yeah, we got fiber the middle of this year. So before that, we're on ADSL, which wasn't too good because the copper lines are pretty old. But now that we've got fiber, we're pretty much living in the future. So it's really cool.
That's excellent. So do other people around you have that, or is it just you specifically?
So the New Zealand government's sort of rolling out a fiber connectivity across the country. So they're aiming to get about 70% of the country connected up in the next few years. So a significant portion of Wellington and Auckland and Christchurch and a whole bunch of other regions are connected. It kind of really depends on which street you're on, and if they've laid the fiber there yet, and then you can get it connected up. Yeah.
Okay. So how have you funded MinuteDock? Have you bootstrapped or used venture capital?
Yep. So MinuteDock is fully bootstrapped. So at the start, we built it, we put it out there. We sort of worked on it part-time for free. We let it grow. And then over the years, it's kind of, continued to grow, and it's been able to hire us to do work on it. Yeah, so fully bootstrapped, built entirely off the revenues that it generates.
Excellent. So what marketing difficulties does a software solution face? Because I think you were one of the very first Xero add-on solutions, weren't you?
Yep.
So what marketing difficulties do you face?
So one of the big challenges is that for an individual customer for MinuteDock is not worth thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And that makes it a real challenge to market direct to those guys via sort of direct marketing campaigns or even online advertising, because some of our competitors make more money per customer and they can outbid us to the point where it's just we just can't justify the cost to get a click. So that's a real challenge, particularly for software products targeting really small businesses. So most of MinuteDock's businesses are in the realms of kind of 1 to 10, 1 to 15 employees.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of our competitors are targeting businesses with 50, 200 plus employees, and they're paying a hell of a lot more money, and they can spend a lot more in terms of sort of saturating those search volumes and that search traffic for Google Ads or various advertising networks on the web. So with MinuteDock, what we kind of did was we figured that out pretty quick when we were spending money and not really getting a lot of returns. So we sort of doubled down and focused on the partner relation channels of the likes of Xero and QuickBooks, etc. And we sort of work closely with those guys to essentially add value to their ecosystem. And as a result, they push their users into MinuteDock and the other add-ons that partner with them as well. So that's essentially our main channel, alongside word of mouth, basically is how MinuteDock does its marketing.
Mm-hmm. So do you find the reviews on the Xero community helpful?
Yeah, so I think the reviews are pretty helpful. I think one of the things is, though, that reviews you've got to take with a grain of salt, because you're either going to get a 5-star or a 1-star review, right? People that are either really happy or are really, really unhappy are the ones that are going to write a review. So people that are pretty content, they're not going to be, so enthused either way to go and spend the time to go write a review. So we find that you still got to take reviews with a grain of salt. But definitely the review system for Xero, particularly with their new add-on directory, which actually displays the number of reviews and the average rating on your listing. That's been really helpful for us, because it makes us stand out from the other guys. Which we've got about 80 reviews with a 5-star average. And I think our closest competitor in our category is sort of got about 10 or 12 reviews.
Oh,
so
excellent.
So we stand out quite a bit.
Well, if you're liking MinuteDock, while you listen to the rest of this interview, please go and review and give Jared a 5-star rating so he stays up there. How do you contend with selling a product to a global market and working through different time zones and cultures?
So time zones, they can sometimes be a challenge, but other than the UK, which is probably the exact opposite time zone to New Zealand, it's probably the biggest challenge because you pretty much get like an hour overlap during the day, which can sometimes be frustrating for customers when they send a simple support query, but it takes about 8 hours to get a response back. So that's definitely a challenge. At the moment, we don't really deal with that other than trying to get back to them as quick as possible when we see the responses sitting there the support queries sitting there when we get up in the morning. But in the future, we'd probably look at getting sort of part-time customer support help in sort of a few different spots around the world. And they can kind of do it all online, and just get back to people, when we're asleep over here.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's a few cultural sort of differences of things like, date formatting, that can sometimes be a challenge. Things like the starts of the week. So, most Western countries generally think the start of the week is, the business week is Monday to Sunday. So Monday to Friday really, and Saturday and Sunday is the weekend. But in some other countries, I think it's Israel, or it might be that actually I think Monday or one of those weekdays is like a public holiday every week and Saturday's a work day or something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of you got to be really careful when you're building features and you're assuming certain cultures or behaviors about what customers are going to do. When if it's a global product, then quite rightly they come back and say, actually, well, this doesn't really make sense for us. So that can definitely be a challenge sometimes. Just keeping that in mind as you're building things out.
About the business days and understanding the different business days. I hadn't actually thought of that before. Yeah,
we also get comments from people saying, well, look, I'm self-employed, and personally, I work on, I take my weekends on Monday and Sunday instead of Saturday, and there's things like that. Perhaps they've got, perhaps on a Saturday or something, maybe someone takes the kids to sports all day, so they spend that day working. That type of thing. So that's something to keep in mind too, is that in this day and age, the concept of everything being standard across everyone is not necessarily true. Everything's a lot more flexible and sort of open to different ways of doing things.
Yes, absolutely. I worked in Singapore, and I started a real job at a real company, and I'd been working there for about 6 weeks, and one of the ladies came up to me and she goes, Heather, why do you never come in on a Saturday? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so apparently they work 6 days a week rather than 5 days a week, and I just didn't realise.
Things like that can definitely cause issues.
Yeah, I was like, oh, really? We're coming in on a Saturday, are we? So anyway, I started coming in on a Saturday.
Yeah. The other thing in terms of being a global product is obviously with pricing. So with MinuteDock, we have New Zealand dollar price and a US dollar price for international customers. So a New Zealand dollar price adds GST on as well. But we actually get quite a few comments from people asking for sort of local pricing rather than just standard US dollar pricing. Comments like the credit card currency conversion fees and things like that. So that's something that we're sort of continuing to look at. Unfortunately, from kind of a technical perspective, the options in New Zealand for payment gateways are pretty limited at the moment. But, hopefully next year there's going to be some big international players coming from the US into the New Zealand market. And
which ones are they?
Stripe and Braintree.
Okay.
They're actually already in Australia.
Yeah.
They just haven't quite jumped over the ditch yet.
I'll bring them when I visit next. Yeah. No, well, that's interesting, but it is an ongoing issue, and I know that as someone pays for multiple add-ons, I've got them coming in all different currencies all the time, and so what I'm paying is just constantly changing as well because of multi-currency differences.
That's right.
So what's on the development roadmap for MinuteDock, Jared?
So a few things. We're still working on getting a native iPhone app out, so that's something we're going to try and finish over the Christmas period and kind of get out early next year.
You need to take a break on Christmas. Unless you can get the elves to do...
I actually already took a holiday.
Did you?
Spent a month in the US just a couple of months ago, actually. So I thought it's probably a bit rich to try and take another holiday over Christmas.
So you'll be working with Santa to develop presents for the MinuteDock users.
That's right. Maybe not on Christmas Day. Might be a bit too full from food, but yeah. And so we've also got a bunch of things we're working on. We get a lot of people wanting to use MinuteDock, but they don't. Rather than invoicing customers, they often have people they need to do payroll for. So it might be a relatively simple business, but they have contractors and they need to run a payroll run for those contractors, or even their own internal hourly staff. And so we're looking at doing a similar thing that we do with the invoicing side of things. So with the invoicing, we like to sort of attach on to products like Xero and QuickBooks, which do invoicing and accounts receivable sort of workflows really well. So we just focus on the time tracking side of things. So looking to do a similar thing with payroll in the sense that we basically just hook up with, Xero payroll in Australia or Zen payroll, etc., and just connect up and send that data in so they can
into their timesheets.
Yeah, exactly. Have employees track their time in the same way that they do at the moment, but it just sort of seamlessly goes into their payroll system if they don't need to do invoicing.
So
or
do
even if they do invoicing as well, oftentimes.
Okay, so you think you could actually have it going? Record the time, record that I've worked 3 hours in the morning, and have it both go to my timesheet and go to an invoice to invoice out to a client.
Yep. So often with a lot of businesses, there's the internal cost, which is the cost of the employee, and there's also the cost you charge the customer, right? So at the moment, we focus on the external charge out to customers with the invoicing workflow. But it's a pretty simple step to give the option to push that same data into your payroll system. So to be clear, MinuteDock isn't trying to be a payroll tool. We're trying to be the time tracking tool, and we're just connecting up with a different type of system which you can push that data into. That's the great thing about software these days, is that you can focus on a certain type of problem and connect up to other systems to solve more specialized and different problems. All full of data, talking to all the other systems, and you can combine a best in class sort of collection of software products to sort of solve your whole workflow. Writing various things, keeping track of that, which again is, in my experience, I've found that people generally try to use one or the other. They use Google Docs or they use Dropbox with Word documents. And personally, my recommendation would be to take a look at Google Drive and use the Google Docs features, because they're really just great for collaborating with other people in terms of writing and working on spreadsheets and things like that. I mean, you don't get as much flexibility in terms of customizing how they look and feel, so it's probably not as ideal for external client-facing documents than, say, a Word doc. Mm-hmm. But for internal stuff, entirely recommend it. It's fantastic.
Excellent. Oh, thank you very much for that. Any other tools you're keen to share? If not, no worries.
Gmail.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gmail is critical, at least for me. It's just such a fantastic email client. I know people that use the various desktop clients, the Mail app and things like that, but Gmail is by far and away the very best email client that I've used. And one of the things actually that I do is I use a system called Inbox Xero. I'm not sure if you heard of that. Basically, the idea is that you treat each email in your inbox as almost a to-do item.
Yes.
And then when you're done with it, when it doesn't require your action as the next thing, you archive it. So the goal is to essentially have your inbox entirely empty, mm-hmm. and every time someone responds, you need to do something again, it sort of pops back into your inbox. You can deal with it.
Oh, there you
and
go.
in terms of a workflow hack, especially when you're wearing lots of different hats and working on lots of different things, that's really a really useful way of working with your email.
Yes, I actually, that's what I do, and that's exactly the solution I do, and I didn't know it had a special name, but it always amazes me when I go and sit with a client and they've got like 4,000 emails, and I'm like going, my God, you've got 4,000 things on your to-do list. It actually is just never really registered that maybe they just aren't deleting or archiving them.
Yeah, and it's sort of, the main thing for me is not missing emails. So I guess every now and again, perhaps you accidentally archive one that you shouldn't have. But, for me at least, even if it's a couple of weeks late because the inbox is so full, at least someone's going to get a response that I haven't forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Whereas people that don't archive their email, I mean, if they don't just run something right away, I mean, they're never going to see it again.
No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I find all my absolutely high priority important stuff always ends up in the spam box, though, so that drives me insane. So I'm always kind of going, checking through the spam box just in case.
One of the other tools, so from a more technical perspective, one of the other tools that we use is an online product called Raygun. And that's actually built by another Wellington business. And basically what that does is that hooks into the MinuteDock code base and it detects if there's ever any bugs or errors.
Oh, okay.
And it sends us out an email, keeps track of it all, so that right away we've known, okay, something's crashed on the site, someone's done something and it hasn't worked. We can go and look into it and deal with it.
Oh, okay.
That's really, really useful.
That's amazing. It's amazing how it would work that out. That sounds like a complicated program, but...
Yeah.
Hey, I've just got a few more questions for you, Jared. Now, this is a question that Peter Thiel, one of the very senior the investors in Xero, asks when he looks to invest in companies. So I've just seen this reported that this is a question he asked, so I thought I'd ask you it. What is something you believe that nearly no one agrees with you on? It's a bit of a hard question.
It is a hard question. So one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is coming back to what I was saying earlier about, where MinuteDock's currently targeted, and the size of it, and what our ideal customer is. And obviously talking about one of the downsides of that is that, smaller businesses are almost by definition, they're going to want to pay less. And obviously that makes it harder to grow and scale the business. So one of the most commonly believed things in software is that it's really important to focus on who your target market is in terms of making the product for them. So the product for a small business is not going to be the same product as for a larger business. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've been really thinking about these days is, in terms of growing MinuteDock, is how can we provide a product and a feature set that works really well for everyone. And it basically comes down to the product having to almost change itself based on who the customer is. And most of the people that I talk to say, well, it's going to be really hard if you go and build all these features that target larger businesses. You're going to alienate the smaller businesses. And personally, what I've been thinking, and I'm beginning to believe at the moment, is that it is actually possible to go and have the product almost define itself and sort of build itself based on who that customer is in a really seamless way. Mm-hmm. And that's especially true with the data that you can get, for example, from Xero in terms of what type of industry they're in, and things like that, in terms of initially priming the product to fit the audience at the time. Obviously, that's a really challenging thing, and I haven't quite figured out exactly how we're going to do it yet, but that's one of the things we're looking at working on.
So in terms of... Are you kind of suggesting an ecosystem for MinuteDock?
No, not really. I'm sort of suggesting that MinuteDock as a product, it adjusts itself in terms of complexity and features mm-hmm. based on the business that's using it without complicating either size business. So, for example, a smaller business doesn't even know that there are these more advanced features, and therefore it doesn't impact what they think about the product. Yeah. Because I'm not sure if you've one of the things that generally happens is if you're using a product. So there's almost two schools of thought. One is just throw every feature in there and have a really complicated and complex user interface.
Yes.
And then when you're using things like that, you think, okay, well, I'm actually only using about 10% of this product, so it's actually not for me. So I'm going to go on and find something else. And that's what you want to avoid, because you want to be able to provide a feature set that works for a range of businesses without actually impacting the perception or the perceived complexity for businesses that don't use some of those features. So in an ideal world, the product would present exactly the features, exactly the complexity that is needed for the specific business that's using it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's something that I think is a potential solution to the problem of, okay, well, how do you create a product that works for a wide range of businesses without impacting the user experience? So, I mean, most people tell me that, in terms of creating an ideal user experience, it's kind of not, it's very, very difficult or not possible to do that. But I think that potentially it is going to be possible, and that's what we're looking to try and do at some point in the next year or so.
That sounds very impressive, and look forward to something like that coming out in the next year or so. But it sounds like a lot of time will be committed to that.
Yeah.
So, and now I'd like to leave you with one final question, Jared. So I have a 17-year-old son, and I think you've kind of touched on what you were doing at school, etc., in terms of learning how to code and self-driven learning. So what advice would you give to just a 17-year-old who's about to leave high school, who wants to be the next Jared Armstrong? What should they do to get to that point at the quickest, but to have the knowledge on board that they need?
Well, I mean, in terms of, the old saying, there's two best times to plant a tree. One was, 20 years ago, and the second best is today. So, the first thing is obviously, in terms of learning, it's a lifelong process. So, you never stop learning. So the best time you can start is today. So, and the great thing is that these days there's just so many resources available for people to go and learn about business, about technology, about programming. There's the online universities, there's Coursera.com, which has a whole bunch of university lectures and courses that you can go through and learn. There's Skillshare.com, where people have made, short video series about various things. There's great series on sort of marketing and business and all that sort of stuff. So, there's just fantastic resource available to go and learn these days. And I think, it's really changing the way people think about education. I think in the next 10 years or the next 20 years, the idea of what we think of as a schooling system will be really different, because I think self-directed learning and sort of tutors sort of helping out and sort of pushing people along is going to be the way, the predominant way that people learn. In terms of where to go from there, I mean, find a topic that you're interested in, come up with something that you want to work on, come up with a project. I think having a project that's interesting is just so critical in terms of motivating yourself to go and learn, because most people like to learn to solve a problem. And sort of that's at least how I've always learned is, I've got a problem, how do I solve this? Go and invest a bunch of time figuring it out. So coming up with a hobby project or a hobby problem to work on is probably really important. Yeah,
that's excellent. No, I really appreciate that response, and I agree with what you're saying there. And as I'm about to potentially have a massive university degree cost land on us, it is questionable the way people need to learn going forward, and there is so much high quality yet very free learning, and certainly with the self-directed learning and pulling a hobby together is a good way to go. So
just on that, one of my personal sort of thoughts on the university system in general is that the universities are great for getting theoretical foundation, theoretical direction in terms of where to learn, but unless you actually apply yourself outside of that theoretical element, so you're actually applying yourself on real world problems, what ends up happening is you end up coming out of university without any real world practical experience, and you're almost at step one. So, one of my recommendations to people going through university, obviously I did, computer science type things, is, especially for computer science majors,
yes,
is to don't just go to university and don't just think that's what you need to do. You need to go and actually apply yourself and apply what you're learning and go and learn beyond what they're teaching you. Go and take that as a roadmap and go and figure out other things as well, because, as I said before, there's so much resource available. I mean, not just for computing degrees, but for almost every degree these days. You can go and get so much information and go and get so much experience from people. The blogs that they're writing are just fantastic. So make sure you go and apply yourself outside of the actual degree and course.
Given your time again, would you still go and do a computer science degree?
Yeah, I think so. I think in terms of, at least looking back in terms of, when I was, 18 and going to university, I think obviously, doing that was the right choice. Probably would have done a few things differently. Like maybe would have spent a little bit more time studying. Yeah, I think everyone probably feels that way in hindsight, at least. So yeah, I mean, I think at the time taking that path was really important in terms of getting the roadmap in terms of what's important.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts today with us, and I'm sure our listeners have learnt so much from you and gained so much from the session today. And if they haven't tried out MinuteDock, please go and try out MinuteDock. And if you have tried out MinuteDock, tell your friend about it, because I think it's a fabulous product, and I really appreciate your time today, Jared.
Cool, thanks very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on.
No worries. Cheers.
Cool, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jared and my conference attending tips. If you do see me at a conference, make sure you come up and say hi. If you like Cloud Stories, can I get you to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and share the show on social media? My name is Heather Smith, and you've been listening to Cloud Stories.
This show is sponsored by Rental SaaS. Rental SaaS is your end-to-end rental management solution, enabling you to keep track of bookings, hired items, and manage your inventory. Rental SaaS integrates seamlessly with Xero. Contact Siva and his team at rentalsaas.com for further information. If you want to get in contact with Heather Smith, please visit her website at www.heathersmithsmallbusiness.com. If you wish to find out more about XU magazines, contact Heather at au@xumagazine.com. You've been listening to Cloud Stories. If you like this podcast, please download it, share it with friends, share it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and social media. And one more thing, can you leave Cloud Stories a 5-star rating on iTunes? Thank you.